safe and sound. And that brings us to our next guest, Dr. John Huber, clinical forensic psychologist, talking about when there's something scary that happens, like the explosion in New York yesterday, how do we talk to our kids about it? Dr. Huber, great to have you on tonight.
Thank you for having me on, Renee. I appreciate it.
Yeah, now kids are so different than adults, cognitively, in their emotions. So what do you suggest from a mental health standpoint? Do we tell them the whole story of what's happening, or do we just tell them in more simple kid-like language?
Well, I think it actually boils down to the age of your child and how well they understand and deal with issues. First of all, if they are little bitty kids and they're not in school, they're going to pick up how to react based on mom and dad and how mom and dad react. So that's important from that standpoint. And once you have that child, then you may sit down and say, hey, all this stuff is going on. Explain to me what is happening, and ask the kid, because they'll have a perspective and that'll give you a place to start with. And the first thing you probably need to do is, once you find out where they're at, is then ask them if they have any specific questions. Once you have those questions, then the next step is just answer those questions. Don't elaborate. Their little minds, like you said, developmentally are not ready for a lot of information, and they may process that and ask you the follow-up question 30 minutes later, or 3 days later, or 3 weeks later. It all depends upon how your child is functioning.
Dr. Huber, I remember many years ago, my nephew was 5 years old at the time, and there was, I believe it was the Challenger explosion, and the teacher had said that everybody got out safe and everybody was okay. No, it was 9/11. I apologize. It was 9/11, and it was in school. He was in school, and the teacher basically said, oh, there was a plane crash into a building, but everyone got out. So what is your perspective about telling kids the truth, and is it ever okay to gloss over it or maybe even lie to kids?
Well, the problem with lying to kids is they remember you lied to them, and they may remember it 5 years later when they have a serious issue, maybe about sex or dating or relationships, and they're not going to trust what you have to say. So what you have to do then, again, is talk to the kid, find out what they know. Even if they're in high school, ask them to explain what they know, and then go through and factually what you understand, explain that to them. And if you don't have the information, tell them you don't have the information.
And as far as the law enforcement officials, how do you foster a really good relationship between kids and seeing law enforcement trying to help and protect us?
Well, I think with all the bad press that firefighters and police officers have had the last, 8 years or so, I think one of the things that can happen is that you can use that example of, look, this is their job to protect us, and they're there for our safety, and we need to listen and rely on what they have to say.
What about the questions that they come up with? What are some typical questions from yesterday's pipe bomb attack that you anticipate kiddos having?
One of the things that they often say is, well, are they going to get us? And, it's scary to think that, but the reality of it is victims of terror attacks are statistically more likely to be bitten by a shark, not once, but actually twice, than they are being an actual victim of a terrorist attack. So if you put things in perspective, I think that helps a lot of our kids.
I remember at one point as a small child going to a police station, walking around, visiting with some officers. How useful or helpful could it be for kiddos to really see them in action and sort of explain to them how they keep us safe?
Well, that definitely is a benefit if you can arrange a tour and things like that. I know my son, when he was in Scouts, we went to the fire department, the police department. They talked about ride-alongs and things they could do at different points when they reach certain ages. And, I work with a lot of officers and things like that, and I oftentimes, invite them to, for example, our holiday parties that are coming up. So they get to see them and realize, hey, they're human too. They're not just this machine or whatever that's supposed to force people to do things.
And I think with some of the terrorist attacks, like the one that we saw yesterday, kids genuinely may have fear, as you mentioned. What would be some of the common mistakes that parents may not on purpose do, but try to kind of rush the issue along so the kiddos don't get to express themselves?
Well, one of the first things I would do is listen to them tell their story, listen to them discuss their fear, and then tell their story back to them. You know, we call it reflection in psychology. You know, reflect back what they've said in your own terms, and they'll clarify. If you're missing something, they will fill in the gaps. And you do two things that way. You know, they know that you've actually heard them. And if you heard something wrong, they've cleared that up now. So when they repeat themselves, if they tell you the story in a different perspective, again, reflect again. And that tells them that their opinions, their feelings are real and valuable without you having to say, oh man, your feelings are real. You've already done that by your actions.
Wonderful. And speaking of actions, Dr. Huber, I know with 9/11, there were a lot of families that were volunteering and helping in efforts, whether it was sending cards of condolences. How powerful is the act of doing something to support those who have gone through a loss? Well,
anything you can do physically, writing a letter, sending them holiday cards this time of year can be very reaffirming to your children and make them feel involved in the situation, like they have done something to help. That's something that kids want to do, you know, especially if they're feeling fear or trauma. Having the ability to actually practice or do something physical and put something in the mail, and you don't have to mail it to the person. If you mail it to the police department or the city where it took place in New York City, they will get it to the victims and they will put it on the monuments and stuff that they're doing.
Thank you so much, Dr. John Huber. What I'm hearing you say is let kids express their fear, let parents hold a safe space for them, and do something in acts of service if you can. Thank you so much. Hey, we're back on America Trends on your Tuesday night right after this.